In this video, we're going to briefly talk about how to configure the management IP address on a Palo Alto device. Now, before we jump into configuring, let's look at what our network should be. Here we have a fairly simple network. Our Palo Alto is right here in the middle, and we are connected up to a server network, a DMZ network, and the public internet. This would be our ISP. So we have various networks here. You can see 192.168.1.20 is this network right here. 50.10 is that network right there. And then there's also this management network, which is kind of dotted in. It's not how you would normally design the network with both networks pointing to the Palo Alto and both networks pointing to the server's environment. But for our simplified network design, this works. This is also 192.168.1.0/24 with the management interface being at the .254. Basically, both this network up here and the management network are connected to the same wire. Just the .1 address would be the default gateway for the servers, as well as for that interface, and the .254 would be the management IP address. Hopefully that makes sense. If not, it will in the future. If we look at this from a slightly different angle, we have here an address table. And before we go any further, I highly suggest for you guys, whenever you're working in a network, to have both of these, both a layout diagram such as this, as well as the address table written out. It just makes it so much simpler so that when you go and you configure these things in the future, you don't really have to remember which IP went where. So specifically, we're working on the Palo Alto firewall with the management IP, and so we want to configure that right there. While we're at it, we're also going to consider DNS. I'm just going to use Google's 8888 and 1111. I know that one's not Google, but we'll just configure those as our DNS addresses. And then when we're done, we'll also see how it works as far as configuring for DHCP. Okay, so configuring with these IP configurations right here, configuring for a static IP address. What we need to do is we need to log into the Palo Alto. Now, when you very first time log or power up a Palo Alto device, you will need a console cable. If this is a physical Palo Alto, then you'll have your Palo Alto device right here. You'll have your laptop or desktop, and then you'll get a serial cable that plugs into the Palo Alto, and then you have to use some sort of a terminal editor. My favorite is Putty. Putty. It's a serial editor or serial console that allows the keyboard and monitor right here, both the KB and monitor, to connect directly to the Palo Alto, so that you are able to work on the Palo Alto even though the Palo Alto doesn't have a keyboard and monitor directly attached to it. That's if you have a physical device. If you have a virtual machine such as I have, normally you can just open up the desktop or the console view of the virtual machine and then go straight into it. If you have physical, you'll have the serial cable. If you don't know exactly how to work with that, it's not that hard. You just have to research it a little bit. And again, if you have the virtual, then this is what you would run right here. So let's go ahead and jump into that. So here I am on my Palo Alto firewall, and we get to the login prompt. By default, the login is admin. So admin user, admin password. That is not secure. It should actually prompt you and say, hey, change that, because that's really, really not secure. If you just powered on your device and you clicked admin, and it says, nope, wrong password, it might take a minute or two. Firewalls and servers in general are not known for being instantly available. As soon as you turn them on, wait about 5 minutes, try admin again, and then you'll see something similar to this. All right, so first thing, we are currently in what's called user run mode, and we can tell that by the fact that we are currently have a greater than symbol right there. That means it's just normal end user run mode. So what we want to do is we want to go into configure mode, and to do that we type configure. And now that that has happened, we can now see that our prompt has changed, and we now have a pound sign. There we go, a pound sign right there to tell us that we're in config mode instead of the normal end user run mode. So first thing we need to do is we need to tell this device run in a static with a static IP address. So for that we do a set device config system type static. What that does, if I did not typo it, device config, there we go. What that does is it tells it don't use DHCP, use a static IP address. And by the way, if you are having issues with typos, Palo Alto also supports what's called a tab complete. So if I, for instance, start typing device config, if I just hit the tab on my keyboard, it automatically completes the command as much as possible. So again, system type static, so it automatically completes the commands for me. Along with that, if I'm not really sure what to hit, I can press question mark. If you're familiar with the Cisco world, this is very similar to that. This question mark gives me context sensitive help to show me what commands are available at that point. All right, so up arrow, there we go. Set device config system type static. That tells it we want to run in a static configuration. Next thing we have to do is we have to tell it which static configuration to use. So set device config system, in this case IP address, and let's see, IP address. Here I have just some plain numbers in there, and so we need to replace those with the numbers we had from our diagram, which I have on another screen here. So set device config IP address is 192.168.1.254 space netmask 255.255.255.0, and yes, you actually do have to type out the 255s. I don't believe the /24 will work there. Default gateway 192.168.1.1, and then DNS-settings, servers, primary 8.8.8.8, and secondary 1.1.1.1. Now, obviously, your IP addresses and DNS settings and gateways are going to differ, but that's what it is for me. Once we've typed all that in, we need to go ahead and save that. So we type in commit. Until I click commit or type commit, the changes do not commit. They are just simply in a pending configuration, and they don't do anything until that's been committed. And once the commit is finished, now we can go ahead and test out our configuration. Now, in order to test out the configuration, I will skip ahead a couple of slides here, and we have our ways to validate the management IP addresses. I always start off with this very first command right here, show interface management. Basically, that shows the configuration that is on the management interface. That helps me confirm that the changes I typed are the ones that have actually been committed. The second command, ping host 8888, that is a Google IP address, and by pinging an IP address, that confirms that network connectivity is working. Tells me that I am connected to the internet and routing is working. And then lastly, ping host google.com, that tells me DNS is working. Pinging a DNS host name or a host name in general first has to do a DNS lookup, so it converts the name to an IP address and then pings out. So by doing these 3 steps, it helps confirm everything is working. So let's go ahead and try that. So we will, first off, we need to exit out of this. We need to exit out of configuration mode. So we go type exit, and then we do a show interface management. And it starts off and it says, oh yeah, here's your IP address and your netmask and your default gateway. And I look back at my notes really quick and those look appropriate. All right, hit spacebar in order to continue on. And then we do a ping. So ping host 8.8.8.8. If you have a preferred target, work with that instead. We can see there my ping is going through. Yay, I'm connected to the internet. Hit Control C in order to stop those pings. And then lastly, ping host www.google.com. So this will do a name lookup. Hit Control C before it goes too far. So it performed a name lookup for google.com. It returned an IP address and now it is pinging successfully. All right, so giving it a static IP worked flawlessly. So the next step would be to configure a DHCP address. If you have a DHCP network, for instance, if I come back here to my to my diagram, excuse me, here on my management network, if I have a DHCP server, then I will automatically configure the management interface on the Palo Alto. I don't, so it will be interesting to see what happens. So to configure the DHCP address, first thing we do, and it's not in here, is we actually have to enter configure mode. So let's go ahead and do configuration mode, and then we go ahead and we set the type to DHCP. And then we set all these other options along with it. So let's go ahead and get into configure mode and then set device config system type DHCP client. Now previously we had to do this in 2 different steps. Set the type to static and then set the static IP. Here we do it all in one. And if I hit question mark at this point, it will actually give me all the other options that are available. So I can choose to include all of these, and in fact, I have to specify all of those for it to finally work. Very first one, accept DHCP domain. DHCP servers might give a domain name. Do I want to accept that? That's a yes or no. Accept DHCP host name. The host name may actually send. The DHCP server may send a host name for my client. Do I want to accept that? Again, that's yes or no. Do I want to send the client ID? This client has an ID, or this server has an ID on it. Do I want to send that to the DHCP server? Again, yes or no. And then do I want to send the host name, the current host name, up to the DHCP server? Again, those are yes or no. I need to include all 4 of those and then just answer yes or no to them. I'm going to go ahead and just say no to all of those, just for simplicity's sake. So accept DHCP domain, tab complete really comes in handy here. No. Accept DHCP hostname, no. Send client ID, no. Send hostname, no. All right, and that's all it takes. Let's go ahead and commit that. Exit, and then let's go ahead and show interface management to see what kind of IP settings we have here, and we will see right here the IP address is in fact none. Unknown. There's no known IP address, no known netmask, no gateway. It didn't work. It didn't set the IP address because there is no DHCP server on this network, therefore nothing was able to be set. If I continue on, let's see, ping host 8.8.8.8, it's going to say network unreachable because it doesn't have an IP address, it doesn't have a gateway, it doesn't know how to get out to the internet. If I do ping www.google.com, it will tell me, ping host. It tells me unknown host because it can't resolve the DNS to the IP address. So there you go, configuring IP addresses for the management interface on your Palo Alto.